In today's crowded news landscape, writing a fantastic story is often just the start. Then you need to make sure that you're getting it out to your audience. One of the big changes of digital platforms is that each individual piece of content goes out onto the internet on its own, and you need to make sure that that gets in front of eyeballs for people to be able to see it. One tool that can really help you with that is Google's Gemini. This large language model can be adapted to help you develop really good SEO to make sure that you're ranking high on search engines, and it can also be adapted to make sure that your content flies on social media to try and make sure you're reaching the widest possible audience. I'm going to take you through an example now that will hopefully show you how you can adapt it and use it in different ways to make sure that as many people as possible are seeing your fantastic journalistic content. Okay, so the tool that we're going to use to do this is Google Gemini, and we're going to use Google Gemini in the AI Studio. And to get to the AI Studio, all you need to do is go to aistudio.google.com, and we're going to use the large language model element of the AI Studio, as I say, Gemini. So you go to chat, and then we're going to post in this box here on the AI Studio. Okay, so there's been a little bit of preparation that's gone into this video, and what I've asked the AI Studio to do before I've actually gone into producing this new chat is I've asked it for some guidance from both Google and from Meta to kind of understand a little bit about their policies around SEO and their policies around promoting content on social media, and given a bit of guidance that I can then feed back into the AI to really kind of help with that. Now, one of the things that it depends to what level that you're using this, but one of the things that can be quite helpful if you're using this on a professional level is to include that documentation in with the prompt that you're giving it, because then you're giving it as much context as possible to work with to give you the most accurate search engine optimization or a best understanding of Meta's latest guidance in terms of social media. But I'm going to put a few documents in to try and give it a bit of context. However, it will probably work very well without any context, particularly with Google, because obviously the company is linked to the search engine optimization side of Google. But if you can add that documentation in, it will just give it a little bit more depth and a bit more understanding of the policies around those areas that can be really beneficial. So I'm going to add those in to help as I go through the prompting. So I've just got 5 documents from both companies here that I'm going to put in there, and that will hopefully give a bit more understanding in terms of what I'm asking it to do. And then I'm going to put my prompt in, and then we'll get started. And in my prompt, I'm telling it that it's an editor for a news organisation, and that I'm going to provide it with an article that I'm wanting some guidance on, and that its task is to generate SEO keywords and headlines from that article. And I'm also going to be uploading some key guidelines from Google for publishers to understand how the SEO process works, and as it says here, internalize the best practices and apply them to the responses. So what I want to do for me is work step by step. So I'm wanting to kind of give it that guidance, I'm wanting to give it that prompt first, and then I'm going to ask it if it understands. And the reason I'm breaking it down is because when it tells me it does understand, I can then upload the article, and then I've got 2 distinct steps rather than uploading the article at the same point as telling it what it's doing and giving it the guidelines. I'm wanting to break those 2 things up to hopefully make it a smoother process and better for it to work with. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to run the prompt and see what happens. And shortly it should tell me that it does understand. And once it's told me it does understand, I can then upload my article. It's probably taking a little while because it's internalising all the information that it's got in, and thinking about the response it needs to give me. Once it's done that, I'm going to upload an article. So the article that I've chosen to upload is one that's happened today. So the biggest news story of the day that I'm doing this video is that Angela Rayner, the Deputy Prime Minister, has resigned. And this is the BBC story that's running on their website from today. So I've saved that article and I'm going to upload that in, and I'm going to use that as my baseline in terms of using this prompt. So yeah, as it's saying there, it now understands, it's internalised the guidelines, and it's going to use them to generate SEO keywords and headlines. Okay, so I'm now going to upload my article into it. So I've got that. So one of the problems that I've just run into is when I've uploaded the article into it, it's said that I've gone through the token limit. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to copy the text from the article and then put that into the model, which will give me the same response in terms of, it's all the same information, all the same copy, but then it should be able to handle it in terms of the tokens and then give me the responses from there. Okay, so it's come up with quite a few SEO keywords. So one of the things that I might need to do is ask it to rank them in a minute, because I'm probably going to have too many to try and get into it. It's given me some different headlines. So as you can see, you can kind of understand a little bit about the SEO process here. So clear and concise is one of the titles that it's given. So Angela Rayner, his name is directly in the headlines here, because obviously that the fact that she's quite a well-known politician means that that information probably needs to be directly in the headline. And as you can see here, we've got tax underpayment, tax breach, tax row, Hove, because that's where the flat is, the fact that she's resigned, quits the government. And as you can see, as you go through all the headlines, the key thing that keeps coming back again in terms of that is Angela Rayner's name is in all of them. So whether it's a full name or whether it's a surname, that is obviously quite crucial in terms of the SEO. Other things, resignation is in a lot of them. It's got a bit of alliteration here in terms of tax trouble. So that is obviously the key keyword, is her name, the resignation, the fact she's Deputy Prime Minister, is all things that you need to make sure is in your headline, most crucially for SEO. So that's quite crucial. And then it's also thought of somewhere you've got the figures involved as well, and the fact that the flat that she's had this issue with is reputedly worth £800,000. So that would be useful. This is less useful in terms of the image selection, so you wouldn't obviously use a user-generated image with it. But it's really helpful, this process, in terms of clarifying exactly what you need to be putting in the headline based on your story, because that can be really important in terms of making sure that you're ranking quite highly through Google. And if you compare it, the guidance that it's given you around SEO to what the BBC's headline is, if we go to the top of this story, Angela Rayner resigns after underpaying tax on Hove flat. So when I go back to Google here, that is very, very similar to some of the suggestions it's coming out with for SEO. So obviously that BBC headline is itself being SEO'd to make sure that it appears quite highly in terms of the ranking. So what I'm going to move on to now is thinking about social. So how might I vary my approach in terms of posting on social around this story versus SEO. So I'm going to put another prompt in now and then ask it to look at the guidance that Meta have given around posting on social, and then try and ensure that I'm figuring some of that into the headlines and the posts that I'm using. So now I'm going to have a go at running the same story, but I'm going to look at Meta's guidance in terms of how we can use this on social media, because obviously one of the things that's very different with social media as opposed to SEO is with SEO, we're looking at people who are putting things into Google and then finding stories from there. With social media, it's more in terms of how we get people to click on stories that they see on social media. So the guidance around Meta from Google will obviously be very different, and the way that we approach it also needs to be quite different in terms of getting people to engage with the story. So put a prompt in, and it's similar to the one I ran with Meta, but there are differences. So again, I'm telling it that I'm an editor for a news organisation. I'm going to provide an article, and I'm wanting it to produce 3 social media headlines for Facebook, and the aim of these is that they are engaging, concise, and encourage clicks and engagement, adhering to the guidance from Meta, and I'm wanting to consider varying them for different angles, things such as curiosity angle, a direct news angle, a question-based angle, and I'm going to upload the key guidance from Meta for publishers to it to get started. And I want it, similarly to how we did the first time with SEO, to internalize that guidance, and then I'm going to upload the story, and then we're going to take it from there. So I'm just going to upload the guidance into it now. So those are uploaded. So one of the reasons I've had to start this on a separate chat is, as you can see from the top, the more things that you upload into it, the more tokens that it uses. And if I added the Meta guidance on top of the Google guidance, it would have been too much for one conversation. So I've had to start a new chat in terms of doing that. So as before, I'm going to ask if it understands. It's going to come back and tell me that it does. And then from there, I upload the story into it, and we'll see what the responses are. So it's a slightly longer workflow, but it's quite important really to separate out those 2 elements to avoid it getting confused about what you're asking it to do. If you do it step by step, it works quite well. Okay, so again, I've got the Angela Rayner article, so I'm going to pop that in. We're going to run that. And what we should see when it comes back this time is a very different approach. And we'll see just how different that is when it comes back. But obviously, we're talking about social media as opposed to SEO, so we are likely to see some differences in what it suggests. So these are the 3 social media headlines it suggested for Facebook, based on the article and the best practices that Meta have suggested. So again, one of the things that's consistent across both SEO and social media is that Angela Rayner is obviously considered a significant enough politician for her to have that name recognition, and her name being all the headlines. The first suggestion is that it's a breaking news headline. The second includes the price of the flat and what we need to know about her resignation. So that suggests that that's a slightly different approach in terms of it's kind of suggesting it's going to give you all the background of the saga that's led to this resignation. And the final one is kind of Labour being rocked by Angela Rayner being out. And the post information on all of them is slightly different. So the bottom one here, will this trigger a leadership challenge for Sakir? Read the full details. So that's kind of trying to engage you into the story a little bit in that way. The second one is using those figures and the fact that she's got this £800,000 flat and £40,000 in unpaid stamp duty to kind of lure people into the story, find out why and what's next for the government. So again, giving you that background information. So those are some of the key things that it's suggesting is different around the social media posts. So what I'm going to ask it now is what images should be used with the story, and what engagement techniques should be used to attract readers to it, and then see what it comes up with in terms of how we should go about promoting the story on Facebook. So again, it's kind of developing a bit of a deeper understanding of how these platforms work, which can be really helpful in terms of getting your story further on social media. Okay, so this guidance is quite detailed. It's provided. It's suggesting for images that you'd want a main headshot of Angela Rayner, or a contextualized shot. So basically, a shot of her plus the flat, if you've got an image of the flat in Hove, and that might then link her to the flat in terms of the story, or potentially an image representing her resignation, or politics, a shot of Downing Street or the House of Parliament. I think if you got an image of Angela Rayner and you got an image of the flat itself, that would connect two elements of the story pretty well. So I think that would probably be a good suggestion in terms of the images that you should be using. And when you go a bit further down here, some of the things that it's suggesting that you do as engagement techniques for attract readers are to ask it direct questions of your audience. So what are your thoughts on Angela Rayner's resignation and the implications for the Labour Party? How will this impact the government's housing pledges? Because obviously she was the housing minister. And the reason that it's suggesting that you should do this is encourage comments, and obviously engage with your audience. Taps into the audience's interest in this as a story, because obviously she's a well-known politician and it's likely been something that people have been discussing and have a view on. So that would be something that would drive engagement. So that's a good suggestion in terms of how you might go about doing that. And as it's suggesting further down, you could use emojis. I'm not sure necessarily if that will drive engagement massively, but you could use them within the context because they have that visual appeal that it says. You could have numbered lists. That's obviously something that's been used on social media for a long time in terms of your 3 key takeaways from today's resignations, quick facts about the row. Those can be all things. And these calls to action at the end, read the full story here, click for the analysis, or get all the details at, and that basically encourages your audience to kind of engage with the story in more depth, encourages them to click through to your website, which is obviously really important as a journalist, because that drives that traffic into those platforms. So you can get quite a lot of detail. Like I say, I think the first suggestion here about asking your audience direct questions would be really useful as well, because it really drives that engagement around the story, and that's something that you would want to kind of capitalise on if you were promoting content to it. So I think one of the big takeaways from this platform is that it can really help in terms of, the key things that you will need to understand around, for example, SEO. What are the terms that you need to make sure you get in your headline to ensure that Google will pick it up? That is crucial in terms of the understanding of those skills. I think one of the other things as well is obviously there is a difference between the way you approach social media and the way you approach SEO, and this platform can really give you a good lift off in terms of planning some strategies in terms of your social media posting, how you're going to drive up engagement on Facebook, because obviously that's the biggest social media platform in terms of people engaging with stories like this. So that can be really crucial. So it's really quite helpful in terms of giving you a bit of planning in terms of how you approach this, because having to come up with keywords without this kind of guidance can be quite tricky, and I think it can be really helpful in terms of giving you alternatives for headlines, because you can take the information it gives you and obviously mix and match to find exactly the headline mix that you're looking for. And obviously if one of your headlines doesn't perform particularly well, you can switch it into another one that may work better, and then over time you can assess which is the best strategy for your individual audience and really kind of hone down an understanding of what you need to do in terms of your headline strategy. But this kind of really gives you some good guidance to work with as a platform. So I would recommend having a crack at using large language models for this, because effectively, when you're doing SEO, you're talking about computers breaking down headlines anyway. So I think large language models giving you that assistance can be really beneficial in terms of leveling the playing field again.